Write the three missing numbers in the empty boxes. So this tells us that when we go down, we add 10,000, and when we move to the right, we add 10. So we can see in this column here, we have 45,170, 55,170, 65,170, so this box here will be 75,170 because we're adding 10,000 each time. Now to find this box, we can read across and we're adding 10 each time. So that's 45,170, 45,180, 45,190. So next we will have 45,200 because 10 more than 190 is 200. We're adding 10, but we already have 9 as our tens digit, so that's how we know the digit to the left, so our hundreds digit will need to change as well. Now let's find this box here. We know that when we go down, we add 10,000, and 10,000 more than 45,190 is 55,190. We're adding 10,000, so it's the 10,000s digit that needs to change. And that means that in this box here, we will have 65,190. The other way to find this box is to look at this number and add 10 as we go across. So if we have 65,170, 10 more than that will be 65,180, and then we'll have 65,190 as our answer for this missing box. The perimeter of this rectangle is 50 centimetres. Calculate the length of the rectangle. So we need to remember that the perimeter is the total distance or length around the outside of the shape. We also know with rectangles that opposite sides are the same length. So if this length here is 7 centimetres, then this length here will be 7 as well. And this length will be the same size. Now the perimeter, so the total distance around the outside, is 50. And we know that this length is 7 and so is this one, and 7 plus 7 is 14. If we subtract that from the perimeter, we get 36. So the two lengths together must be 36 centimetres, because 36 plus 7 plus 7, so 36 plus 14 is 50. So two lengths total 36 centimetres, which means to find one length we need to divide 36 by 2, and that gives us 18 centimetres as the length of the rectangle, and we can check that 18 plus 7 plus 18 plus 7 equals 50, because to find the perimeter we're adding up all the distances around the outside. Circle two numbers which have a difference of 2. Now there are two possible answers for this question. We could circle minus 0.5 and 1.5, because on a number line, if we start at minus 0.5, we can add 0.5 to get to 0, and then we can add another 1.5 to get to 1.5. So altogether, to get from this number to this number, we added 0.5 and then added 1.5. So that means we added 2.0, so 2 altogether. Now there is another possible answer. We could circle minus 1 and 1, because on a number line, from minus 1 to get to 0, we need to add 1, and then to get to 1, we need to add 1, and if we add 1 and then add another 1, we've added 2 altogether. So there are two possible answers here, but notice when you're finding the difference between a negative and a positive number, What you can do is ignore any negative and positive signs and just add the numbers. So 1 plus 1 is 2, so that's a difference of 2, and 0.5 plus 1.5 is 2, so that's a difference of 2 as well. Circle the two decimals which are closest in value to each other. We have 0.9, 0.09, 0.99, 0.1 and 0.01. Now what they mean by closest in value is that if we had a number line and put these numbers, these decimals, on the number line, which would be closest together? Well, to work that out, it's useful to make the decimals have the same number of decimal places. And we can put zeros on the end of decimals without changing the numbers. So what we have here are, now that we've put our zeros, we have numbers which all have 2 decimal places, 2 digits after the decimal point. And now that we've done that, we can compare numbers in the same way as if we had whole numbers. So if we had 90, 9, 99, 10 and 1. So the numbers that are closest together are 0.09 and 0.1, because if we ignored the decimal point with our end zeros, we can see that 9 and 10 would be closer than any other numbers if we ignored the decimal point. Write a cross on the numbers that are not square numbers. So remember, square numbers are what we get when we've multiplied a number by itself. And the symbol for squared is a little 2. But for these numbers, we don't have little 2's, we have little 3's. And that's the symbol for cubed. So if you have a cubed number, or if you want to cube a number, you multiply it by itself, but then multiply it by itself again. So 1 cubed is 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. Now 1 is also a square number because 1 times 1 is 1. So because 1 cubed is 1 and 1 is a square number as well, we don't want to write a cross on 1 cubed. So now let's look at 2 cubed. That means 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4 and 4 times 2 is 8. But 8 is not a square number. Our square numbers are 1, 4 and 9 because 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, but 8 is not a square number because you can't multiply a number by itself to get 8 as our answer. So we need to put a cross on 2 cubed. Now let's look at 3 cubed. That's 3 times 3 times 3, so 27, because 3 times 3 is 9 and 9 times 3 is 27. But 27 is not a square number because you can't multiply a number by itself to get 27. You can multiply 5 by itself to get 25, or 6 by itself to get 36, but you can't multiply a number by itself to get 27. So we need to put a cross on 3 cubed as well. Now 4 cubed means 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16, and then 16 times 4 is 64. And 64 is a square number as well. That's because 8 times 8 is 64. So when you multiply 8 by itself, you get 64, which means that 64 is a square number as well as a cube number. So we don't want to put a cross on 4 cubed. Now 5 cubed, we have 5 times 5 times 5. 5 times 5 times 5 is 125, because 5 times 5 is 25, and then 25 times 5 is 125. But that's not a square number. You can't multiply a number by itself to get 125, Or I should say, you can't multiply a number by itself only once to get 125, so we need to put a cross on 5 cubed as well. Guidebooks cost £1.50 each. The Waxworks sells £24 worth of guidebooks. How many guidebooks is this? Well, here we need to work out £24 divided by £1.50. But to do that, the easiest way is to count up in steps of £1.50 until we get to £24. So we know that £1.50 is the cost of one book. If we spend £3, or if the Waxworks sells £3 worth, that would be 2 books, because £1.50 times 2 is £3. But we want to know the cost of £24 worth. Now 3 times 8 is 24, and 2 times 8 is 16. So if you spend £24, or if the Waxworks sells £24 worth of books, that will be 16 books. Write the correct whole number in the box. 5 miles is approximately how many kilometres? Well, there's no clever way of working this out. You just need to remember that 5 miles is about 8 kilometres. And if you remember that, you can work out that 1 mile must be 8 divided by 5, or 8 over 5 kilometres. So that's 1.6 kilometres, because 8 divided by 5 is 1.6. And you can also work out that 1 kilometre must be 5/8, or 5 divided by 8, 5/8 of a mile. Put a ring around all the square numbers. So we need to know that a square number is what you get when you multiply a number by itself. So 4 is a square number because 2 times 2 is 4. When you multiply 2 by itself, you get 4, so 4 is a square number. But 7 is not a square number. You can't multiply any number by itself to get 7, so we don't want to circle 7. In fact, 7 is not only not a square number, it's a prime number. The only way you can get an answer of 7 is 1 times 7. Now 24 is also not a square number. You can't multiply the same number by itself to get an answer of 24. But 25 is a square number because you can multiply 5 by itself to get 25. 36 is a square number as well, because 6 times 6 is 36. But 40 is not a square number, because you can't multiply the same number by itself to get 40. A school buys some yo-yos as prizes. The yo-yos cost £4.25 each. The school has £40 to spend on prizes. They buy as many yo-yos as they can. How much money is left? Well, first of all, we need to work out how much money the school spends on yo-yos. They cost £4.25, but the school can only buy £40 worth. So we need to work out £40 divided by £4.25, and the best way to do that is to count up in steps of £4.25 until we get to £40. So we know that one yo-yo is £4.25, so to find the cost of 2 yo-yos, we can multiply that by 2, or add £4.25 plus £4.25, and that would give us £8.50. But that's still not very close to £40, so we don't want to keep on adding £4.25. Instead, it makes more sense to double. So if we double 2, we get 4, and if we double £8.50, so add £8.50 to itself or multiply it by 2, that gives us £17. Again, we're still not close to £40, so we can double again. Double 4 is 8, and double 17, So 17 times 2, or 17 plus 17, is 34. Now we're getting closer to £40. So let's just add one more yo-yo, so add £4.25. If we add that to £34, we get £38.25. Now if we add another yo-yo, that would be £4.25 more than £38.25. So that would be more than £40, so too expensive, because they only have £40 to spend. They can't spend more than that. So we know that the school must buy 9 yo-yos, and that costs them £38.25. But we want to know how much money is left. They have £40 and they spend £38.25. So that means £1.75 is left. Seb had some cherries. Every day he ate 10 cherries and gave 5 away. After he gave the last 5 cherries away, he had eaten 40 cherries altogether. How many cherries did Seb have at the start? So we know that every day he ate 10 cherries and gave 5 away. We also know that altogether he'd eaten 40 cherries. Now 10 times 4 is 40, so we can work out how many he gave away by multiplying by the same number, and 5 times 4 is 20. So if he'd eaten 40 cherries by the end, then he'd also given away 20. And we want to know how many he had at the start, so if 40 were eaten and 20 were given away, that means there must have been 60 cherries altogether at the start. 3 different numbers add up to 40. The numbers are all even. Each number is less than 20. Write what the 3 different numbers could be. So even numbers are multiples of 2, numbers in the 2 times table. And we know that each number is less than 20, so the numbers in the boxes we can take from the numbers that we've written here, because we have even numbers, multiples of 2, that are less than 20. So now, rather than just picking 3 random numbers and seeing if they add up to 40, what I would do is add the largest 2 numbers and then see what more we need to add to make 40. So 18 plus 16 is 34, and then from 34 we need to add another 6 to get to 40, because 40 minus 34 is 6. So our numbers could be 18, 16 and 6. That gives a total of 40. The numbers are all even because they're numbers that are multiples of 2, and each number is less than 20. There are other possible solutions for this question. You could have 18, 14 and 8. You could have 18, 12 and 10. You could have 16, 14 and 10 as well. A piece of cheese has a mass of 350 grams. Mark an arrow on the scale to show the reading for 350 grams. So on this scale, we have some thick lines which are marked, so 0, 500, 1 kilogram, because remember 1 kilogram is 1000 grams. We also have these middle-sized lines and these little lines. If we look at the middle-sized lines, to get from 0 to 500, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each of these middle-sized lines represents an increase of 100. So we have 100, 200, 300, 400, and then 500. Now we want to show 350, and 350 will be right in the middle of 300 and 400. So we can mark 350 grams here. Draw one line from each calculation on the left to the correct box on the right. One has been done for you. So 11 times 11 has an answer greater than 100, because 11 times 11 is 121. Now we have 4 times 5 times 6. 4 times 5 is 20, and 20 times 6 is 120, because 2 times 6 is 12, and then we need our end 0. And 120 is greater than or larger than 100. Now 56 plus 27 plus 17. 56 plus 27 is 83, and then 83 plus 17 is 100. So that answer is equal to 100. Now 835 minus 745 is 90. If we think 100 more than 745 would be 845, but 835 is 10 less, so our answer is 10 less than 100. So we need to draw the arrow to less than 100. And now 4,000 divided by 50. When we have end zeros in a division question, what we can do is cancel them. So we can cancel one end zero in our dividend and our divisor. And then we have 400 divided by 5. That's 80 because 40 divided by 5 is 8. But then after the 40 we have another 0, so we need a 0 in our quotient. And 80 is less than 100, so that's where we need to draw the line. 200 girls and 100 boys were asked about their favourite meal. These pie charts show the results. For each statement, put a tick if it is true. 3/4 of the boys chose fish and chips. So the boys' pie chart is this one here. And we can see that that's 3/4, so this first statement is true. We know that this is 3/4 because we can see a right angle in the section that is not fish and chips. And if we have a right angle in a pie chart, that shows 1/4. And if 1/4 didn't choose fish and chips, then we know that 3/4 did. Now we have the statement 3 times as many boys as girls chose fish and chips. So we can work out how many girls and how many boys chose fish and chips and see if the number is 3 times as large for boys as girls. Notice it says 3 times as many boys, so we need to find the number. Just because the amount of the pie chart shaded for fish and chips is 3 times larger, that does not mean 3 times as many, because we only have 100 boys, but we have 200 girls. So for girls, 1/4 chose fish and chips, and 1/4 of 200 is 50. 200 divided by 4 is 50. And then for boys, 3/4 chose fish and chips, and 3/4 of 100 is 75. 100 divided by 4 is 25, times 3 is 75. Now 75 is not 3 times as large as 50, so this statement is false. And it can be confusing. Boys are 3 times more likely to choose fish and chips, but that does not mean 3 times as many boys as girls chose fish and chips. Altogether, half of the children chose fish and chips. Well, we know that 50 girls and 75 boys chose fish and chips, so that means 125 children altogether chose fish and chips. But how many children were there? There were 200 girls and 100 boys, so that means that there were 300 children altogether. Now 125 is not half of 300. If we write 125 over 300 as a fraction, we can't simplify that to 1/2, so this statement is false. Fewer than half of the children chose fish and chips, because 125 is less than half of 300. Now 25 more boys than girls chose fish and chips. We know that 75 boys and 50 girls chose fish and chips, and 75 is 25 more than 50, so this last statement is true. Join the dots to make 4 different triangles. One has been done for you. So they've given us this right-angled triangle here. There are lots of possible solutions for this question, but we could make another smaller right-angled triangle. We could make an isosceles triangle like this, or make a smaller isosceles triangle. So there are lots of possible triangles that we can make, but the main thing to understand is that if they want 4 different triangles, that means that if you rotate or if you turn one of your triangles, it can't be the same as one of your other triangles. You need to make triangles with different dimensions, different side lengths, different angles.